Today's news hits hard. Putin's weapons empire is falling apart, with Russia's war machine breaking under sanctions and a collapsing budget. At the same time, Kyiv is rising fast, becoming the world's new drone powerhouse, producing millions of combat UAVs, while global giants lag behind. And the West is toning up the pressure. The US and Europe prepare a new crushing wave of sanctions designed to force the Kremlin to its knees. The battlefield, the economy and the global diplomacy all shifting at once. Welcome to Ukraine Today. I'm Zoroslava Kolesnikova. Let's dive into the biggest stories of the day. Putin's arms empire is falling apart. Russia's war machine is breaking down. Russia's military-industrial complex is hitting the edge. Putin's weapon exports are dropping fast, and even unofficial numbers confirm it. The reasons are clear. Sanctions are shocking the industry, the budget is shrinking, the foreign buyers no longer trust Russian weapons. Putin's war machine is running out of power.
The Russian military-industrial complex is on the brink. Exports of Putin's weapons are falling.
There are unofficial figures and no one disputes them.
The main reasons are budget constraints and sanctions, which are making the economic situation in Russia more difficult. The so-called special military operation has shown the world not only the weakness of the Russian army, but also of its weapons.
People who are employed in the global arms market are currently asking a simple question. Is the weaponry produced by Russia actually that effective? Because, well, listen, when you're supposed to accomplish something in 2 months, but you still can't do it after 4 years, then maybe your weapons aren't that great after all. And accordingly, many buyers of Russian weapons are starting to wonder, if Russia can't achieve victory in this war quickly and decisively, then maybe their weapons aren't that good. And if these weapons aren't that good, then maybe it's not worth buying them.
Before Russia's invasion of Ukraine, the export of Russian arms brought about $14 billion in foreign currency revenue to the economy every year. Now, compared to 2022, it has been cut in half. If in 2018 to 2022 Russian supplies went to 47 countries, then in 2024 to 33.
The Russian Federation held one of the leading positions in the global arms market. It should be noted that the Russian Federation's main defense orders come from India and accordingly countries of the Near and Middle East. That is, the most solvent countries at the moment are precisely those re-equipping their own armed forces.
According to an American publication, last year Russia exported only $1 billion worth of arms.
The Russian Federation is forced to admit the fact that it is unable to fulfill international orders. A vivid confirmation of this is the failure of the Indian order. This refers to the deliveries of S-400 surface-to-air missile systems to that country. Moreover, the contract was signed until 2023, and since 2023, the Russian Federation has already extended this agreement twice. Moreover, they explain this by saying that the Russian Federation does not have enough surface-to-air missile systems to not only meet the needs of the Indian side, but also, accordingly, to satisfy the needs of its own army.
For the Russian military-industrial complex, foreign contracts have always been more attractive than domestic ones. Thanks to them, the Russian military-industrial complex grew wealthier, which allowed it to supply the Russian army in parallel. However, the situation has now changed.
Russia both profited here and at the same time made others dependent on its maintenance services. We understand that, especially in matters of the military-industrial complex, it's important not just to sell a helicopter, a plane, a tank, whatever it may be, but the main thing is the maintenance, because technical service is essential, and this is exactly where this dependency arises. And now, when people are refusing to buy these products, they are also refusing the maintenance because you can't provide maintenance for equipment in other countries. And if you sell something, that's a one-time deal, but maintenance is a deal that lasts for many years to come. And this is another area where Russia is losing out.
Russia's military industry has focused not on exporting its products, but on fulfilling domestic orders for the Russian army, which have become a priority amid the full-scale war in Ukraine. But even here, problems have arisen.
The opportunities to replenish the Russian treasury have sharply decreased, and accordingly, the capabilities of the Russian military-industrial complex have also diminished. Moreover, Kemesov once again emphasizes, I'm quoting the original source here, that the government needs to provide long-term, low-cost funding to support technological development. But at the same time, he also notes that the Russian political leadership currently does not have such opportunities.
Currently, the Russian Federation's military-industrial complex is engaged in restoring Soviet-era models of heavy armored vehicles, the expert emphasizes.
Western technologies form the foundation of the Russian military-industrial complex. This includes equipment, electronics, and, well, essentially the main components for manufacturing both weapons and armored vehicles. And at the present moment, due to lacking the ability to purchase advanced technological equipment and essential components, the Russian state corporation Rostec is now forced to admit that its main activity is essentially focused on the maintenance and repair of Soviet-era armored vehicles.
Losses of Russian military equipment during the war in Ukraine are estimated to be in the tens of thousands of units, including tanks, armored vehicles, artillery, airplanes, and helicopters. And the actual losses are likely even higher.
Every voice matters. Join our community, support independent journalism, and help us bring you the truth from Ukraine. Become a member of Ukraine today. Join us now.
Kyiv is turning into a global hub for combat drone production. Ukraine now builds up to 4 million combat UAVs a year, and an incredible scale. For comparison, the US produces under 100,000 annually. Ukraine isn't just catching up, it's setting the pace for the world.
Kyiv is becoming a global center for the production of combat drones. Currently, Ukraine produces up to 4 million combat UAVs annually. Meanwhile, the US manufactures less than 100,000 combat drones per year. And 4 million is not the limit of the capabilities of the Ukrainian defense industry. With sufficient funding, this number could increase several times over. This was written on his page by Ukraine's Minister of Foreign Affairs, Andriy Sybiha.
The current arms race is not about nuclear weapons, but about millions of cheap drones. Whoever can ramp up production faster will secure peace. With sufficient funding, we can produce up to 20 million drones next year. Andriy Sybiha, Minister of Foreign Affairs of Ukraine.
Right now, Ukraine is racing against time, both in terms of resources and technology. And the issue of increasing UAV production is a matter of survival. Ukrainian companies are not only meeting the needs of the defense forces, but are also trying to enter international markets. Unique technologies tested in real combat conditions are attracting serious interest from partners. Some Ukrainian companies have already expanded their production not only within Ukraine, but also beyond its borders.
Ukrainian companies in Europe. Skaton has opened a facility in Slovakia and attracted over 10 million euros in investments. Flywell is preparing a joint production venture with Finland. Firepoint has received support from Denmark for the development of rocket fuel for the Flamingo cruise missile systems.
The Ukrainian company CIR is setting up a production line in Finland. Its founder, Oleksandr Khrakov, explained in an interview with Bloomberg that he is pursuing two goals in Finland. First, to ensure reliable supplies to the front in Ukraine by moving part of the production capacity outside the combat zone. And second, to attract Western funding to expand production.
The war and the need to finance, develop, and manufacture weapons to fight a wealthier and larger adversary have pushed Ukrainian manufacturers to exchange technologies with their European allies. Khrakov is concerned that Europe is not learning quickly enough from Ukraine's experience. In the time it took him to set up a production line in Finland, his drones in Ukraine have already gone through 3 generations.
Not only the production of drones abroad, but also the assistance of our European partners is a key to victory in the war against Russia. Without exaggeration, a historic agreement was signed by Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky and French President Emmanuel Macron.
I want to emphasize the importance of this agreement. This is a strategic agreement that will be in effect for 10 years starting next year. We understand all the fundamentals of this agreement, political, financial, and industrial. This is a historic agreement. It is extremely valuable that France is taking such a step toward achieving real, guaranteed security in Europe.
Under the terms of the agreement, Ukraine will acquire 100 Rafale F4 aircraft from France by 2035 for Ukraine's combat aviation. SAMP-T air defense systems, radars for them, air-to-air missiles and aerial bombs. Also, already this year, joint projects between the defense industries of the two countries will begin. This concerns joint production of interceptor drones and work on developing critical technologies for Ukrainian UAVs. Strengthening its own air defense and systematic deep strikes on Russian infrastructure are the key to Ukraine's successful end to the war.
The West turns up the head. New sanctions wave coming for Russia. The US and Europe are preparing a new powerful round of sanctions against Russia. Europe finally talks openly and confidently about strong, high-quality measures. Meanwhile, President Donald Trump is pushing Senate Republicans to speed up a bipartisan sanctions bill that will hit Moscow hard. Real pressure starts with real sanctions.
The US and Europe are preparing a new wave of sanctions against Russia.
The Europeans definitely deserve a big plus for openly discussing such, in my opinion, truly high-quality initiatives.
US President Donald Trump has called on the Senate Republican Majority Leader to step up work on a bipartisan bill for new sanctions against Russia.
If you want to bring President Vladimir Putin to the negotiating table, no plan with 28 points or 12 points will work unless President Putin believes that we will continue ongoing military support for Ukraine and that we will go after those who buy cheap Russian oil.
According to the co-author of the bill, Lindsey Graham, Donald Trump signed the bill, making amendments that leave the final decision on their implementation and removal personally up to the President of the United States. This refers to the so-called draconian sanctions with huge tariffs on countries that purchase oil from the Russian Federation.
When it comes to the so-called shadow fleet, there are several measures the Europeans can do about it, since much of this activity takes place in areas much closer to them.
At the same time, Europe has stepped up its efforts to combat the Russian shadow fleet. Germany, France and Poland have proposed new measures to the EU against Russia's expanding shadow fleet, which allows Putin to freely trade oil around the world.
The Russians have learned how to circumvent the current sanctions restrictions regarding the shadow tanker fleet. By the way, the Russian Federation has amassed such a huge shadow tanker fleet that it now accounts for about 20% of all tankers in the world on planet Earth. That is, according to preliminary estimates, this is now about 1,000 tankers.
The proposed measures do not involve targeted actions against individual vessels, but rather sanctions against the companies that register them, insure them, and provide logistical services, particularly in European countries.
And by analyzing their documentation, it will be possible to determine where each vessel actually is and who is servicing these so-called shadow fleet tankers. This, of course, will help, first of all, to verify them much more effectively than before, and accordingly to impose the maximum possible sanctions on them, in other words, to prevent Russian oil and petroleum products from entering European markets.
According to Bloomberg, amid sanctions against Lukoil and Rosneft, the price of Russian Urals oil has dropped to its lowest point in the past 2.5 years. Its current price is $36.61 per barrel. Future restrictions will deal an extremely painful blow to Putin's oil dollar cash cow.
That's all for today on Ukraine Today. If you want the truth to stay louder than Kremlin propaganda, don't forget to like, share and subscribe. Your support helps us keep digging, explaining, bringing you the story the enemy wants to hide. Stay strong, stay informed and stay with Ukraine.